resulting in an indefinite global blackout and complete radio silence. What very realistic event could happen to make 2020 even worse? Any disasters during this pandemic. Imagine if this is still spreading rapidly in April with mass quarantines and a tornado outbreak on the likes of 2011 super outbreak hits. Injured normally have medical to go to, but if it's all filled up by sick patients, well, let's just hope it doesn't come to that. Everyone in the States, count yourselves lucky that this outbreak didn't hit in July to September and hope it gets cleared before then. Imagine if this was widespread during a Category 5 hurricane impact when they normally tell an entire region to scram to other parts of the country. I'm well aware of comments regarding Corona still a threat in June to September. You aren't unique. Please stop leaving those comments and instead reply to those that already have done so. The PAC-NW experiences a 9.0 Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. This is the one I'm afraid of. With all the hoarding and everything, a reminder that most of us aren't prepared and it could realistically happen. I wonder if that's part of why people are buying up water that doesn't seem necessary for a pandemic. Let's see, emergency supplies water of course. Wait no, that's for an earthquake, not pandemic. Oh shit, what if we get an earthquake too? If Yellowstone erupted, you might as well grab a good bottle of your choice and kick back. If an enormous solar flare from the sun strikes the earth, it could take out our electrical grid, internet, and almost all electronic devices. A solar flare stuck in 1859 that would have caused $10 trillion worth of damages today. Giant forest fires evacuating large parts of California during the escalating coronavirus outbreak. Pretty ironic that last October I was told that I had to leave my house and now being told to stay home. People would probably be mass tested and those who test positive would be separated in evacuations and everyone would be evacuated en masse. Well, that would be the optimal solution. Realistically, everyone jumps in their car, creates massive traffic jams, tear apart neighboring states' infrastructure, spread the virus to neighboring states and cities, overwhelm the stores, and just stay in hotels. Another hurricane. While everyone's in quarantine. An infectious disease hurricane would not be fun. Everyone must evacuate and move to shelters inland. At that point it's almost like you have to quarantine the healthy and high-risk people and let everyone else just get it. Natural, Yellowstone erupts. Man-made, some moron decides a war is a good way to kickstart the economy after the corona disaster. Someone deciding now is a good time to go to war when defenses are down? And my inbox got defeated, this is border violation. Let's not give 2020 any more bright ideas, please. But I'm down to one good arm thanks to 2020. Let's stop trying to see how it can get worse. Mass tested? In the US? The US has only performed 60,000 COVID-19 tests to date. It took weeks to even get that many tests are done. There were 90,000 people evacuated in one day of California wildfires last year. Unexpected solar flare completely shuts down all electronics and internet for a long period, would be horrible for the quarantined, I'm in there. That would be pretty bad. If all electronics and the internet shut down, think about what you currently have in your possession to offer as trade. Assuming that roving gangs don't just forcibly take it from you first. The big one finally happens in California that we've been warned about our entire lives. The whole of California quarantines itself by fucking breaking apart from the continent. Well, my mom died yesterday, so there's that. Definitely did not expect to wake up to all of this. Thank you all for your support. You have no idea how much that means to me. Economy collapsing beyond repair everywhere. California just got put on lockdown, and if it was its own country it would be the 5th largest economy in the world. This isn't going to just bounce back. I mean, it won't likely bounce back, we will likely have a recession, but this very likely isn't the end of the modern economy, which some people seem to be implying. Another natural disaster, an insect plague, another war, another disease, etc. At this point it's amazing that we're still here and not in a grave somewhere given the circumstances of the year so far. I give up. I swear every continent and every country is experiencing some biblical plague right now. The coronavirus could mutate to become deadlier. Or we could just realize it is deadlier or has long-term effects we didn't know about. When diseases mutate, the virus doesn't just send out a telepathic signal that makes all the other viruses in the world mutate at the same time, so hopefully we could try to contain that new concentrated mutated strain. Grocery stores are forced to close due to employees being infected by the coronavirus. There's always someone who would be willing to take the job, especially with the amount of unemployment coming. A much overdue seismic big one hitting my state of California. The last catastrophic quake, as told by several tribes lore, was in the 1700s and created Humboldt Bay. That would suck with everyone being in quarantine right now. A coronal mass ejection. There was a huge one in 1859 called the Carrington event. It destroyed telegraph lines. You're probably thinking, oh, those are rare, that'll never happen again. In 2012 a similar sized flare missed the Earth by 9 days. If one did occur, we'd only have 17 hours from release to try and minimize damage, and less time if there was a previous smaller CME before a big one which pushed most of the solar wind out of the way. There are more than 3,000 satellites in orbit at the minute. We would lose almost every single one, and the ones that don't decay in their orbits and burn up in the atmosphere might crash into each other, creating a ring of space junk around the Earth, trapping us in for the foreseeable future. You don't want to know how bad it could be on Earth. This virus doesn't just clear up on its own. The vaccine takes longer than estimated to develop, but it's not a cure for those that already have it anyway, and then the virus mutates. International borders are closed. The military begins patrolling to make sure people are not sneaking in. Whole towns and cities are now closing to outsiders. People begin to stop trusting their neighbors or people they don't know. Governments stop behaving democratically and urge the population to report their own family, friends, and neighbors to the authorities if they look sick. Nobody has a job. Money doesn't matter because it has no use. Violence is a feature of life. The government has gone to ground, and then reports that the military has started shooting civilians at the borders begin to circulate. North Korea successfully launching a nuclear warhead that lands either in South Korea or Japan, then sparking an international incident. Or Russia invading the Baltic states. If North Korea nukes someone, they are on their own. China has voted against them in the UN in the past, and if China does anything to show support with North Korea, they would effectively be isolating themselves. Coronavirus mutates and has a 20% mortality rate. Obviously, it's not a good thing, but if it mutates, not all of the coronavirus strains worldwide would have the same mutation. It's not like Plague Incorporated. It would only be centered around a few cases that have the mutation, which would likely be unable to spread since so many countries are already under lockdown. That the 2020 election ends up being like the 2016 one, between two candidates no one really wanted, but are stuck with. That the 2020 election doesn't even happen because under a state of emergency the current admin enacts some long forgotten, or simply made up, because reasons, clause wherein the president remains so indefinitely during the crisis. I strongly suspect the 2020 election to be postponed a year. If voters can't go outside, it doesn't seem fair to hold it, and as much as I don't like the current administration, it seems logical and fair and would expect any administration to do it, even though in this instance, people will see it as Trump going further. I guess it's like the boy who cried wolf. He has done so much anti-democratic shit that when one is needed it will be so much more divisive. Definitely a hot war. A pandemic might create enough stress to cause the Middle East to erupt. China is already sending out bombers and fighter jets into Taiwanese air identification zones, and today Chinese fishermen attacked a Taiwanese Coast Guard ship. The world is distracted and China needs its own distraction to keep its population away from thinking about the government's failure and the COVID disaster. The secondary effects on society if the COVID-19 continues to increase exponentially. A lot of the strands of the fabric of society that we take for granted could start unraveling. We are in a very precarious situation. Trump's re-election. I think he's going to win again. I can just see it. The incumbent almost always gets re-elected, and I don't see the Democrats flipping some of the key states that voted for him in the first place. Terrorists decide to bomb important medical labs as well as the CDC and WHO. Even ISIS recommended not traveling with all this going around. It has to be some chaotic evil anarchist group. The CDC has one of the only two variola virus, the virus that causes smallpox, stocks left in the world. Imagine if that went airborne because someone blew up the lab containing it. Labs might hurt, but honestly, would losing the CDC even matter at this point? May even speed up some red tape. Multiple volcanic eruptions around the planet plunged the world into an ice age, 2 billion die, the rest wish they had. The IT bill being passed by Congress. It effectively ends internet encryption and any perceived internet privacy we still have. https://www.f.org/deeplink/2020/03/earn-it bill government's not so secret plan scan every message online. Here's how you can let your congressional rep know that you expect them to vote against the IT bill. Please share this and please make your voice heard. https://act.f.org/action/protect our speech and security online. Reject the Graham-Blumenthal bill. An attack on the power grid that disables it for several weeks. It would make the panic over the coronavirus look like a cakewalk by comparison. An unusually large coronal mass ejection from the sun knocks out electrical systems and telecommunications worldwide, resulting in an indefinite global blackout and complete radio silence. Still no toilet paper. 2020 cancelled. After careful consideration, we have decided that it is no longer in the best interests of everyone involved to proceed with 2020. While we recognize that a lot of hard work has gone into preparing for 2020, if we're honest, it has just turned into a bit of a shit show and we feel it best just to call it off. We understand that some of you are looking forward to seeing what cruel and peculiar cluster of a disaster 2020 would throw up next, but on balance we believe it is probably best not to find out. We will instead provide ticket holders with a full refund or exchange, and start afresh with 2021 on Monday. Our plan is to deliver a more enjoyable year, similar to say 2016, which everyone thought was the absolute worst year of all time, but in retrospect was a f-king walk in the park. See you next year. The management. The most likely if Iran collapses, the nation is being destroyed by the virus and there have been mass protests for months on the end, them shooting down the jetliner only added to it and the virus is just making things worse. Iran collapsing will lead to possibly America going to try to create stability, but it definitely won't and will cause even more problems. A whole new wave of terror groups would likely form, think of it. If ISIS was actually an effective military force with the equipment, training, and financial support to back it up, and you have what parts of the Iran military could become, add to that nuclear material, not even weapons grade, just the ability to have it and make some kind of dirty bomb. The collapse will also lead to an even bigger refuge crisis as well as other terrorist groups moving in to carve up the land. In short, when Iran collapses, and it probably will, it's gonna cause the whole Middle East to get worse. Probably a common trope here, but here's my take. A huge recession, as 90% of the working class loses their job. International trade crippled due to airports, ports, and borders being closed, adding to that trading companies going bankrupt. But wait, there's more to it. Even with their best efforts, governments around the globe failed to contain the coronavirus, resulting in them having to enact martial law. The people being hungry and angry, they respond with riots and some even try to overthrow their government. Lots of raids in houses or medical supplies and food, warehouses, at least the one that still has some stock left. I'm surprised I haven't seen asteroid. Depending on the size of the asteroid, assuming we caught it at least several months in advance, we're actually in a pretty good spot now. Mostly thanks to SpaceX, we are at a point where if we needed to, we could have a heavy launch vehicle ready to go in a matter of weeks. If we modify the next suitable satellite, capsule, or probe in line to launch with upgraded communications hardware and space to hold nuclear weapons, we stand a decent chance to nudge the asteroid out of the way. Depending on the time frame, we could get multiple shots at this in case one fails. A postponed election. This is obviously a US issue and I'm not taking political sides. But postponing the election because of things like caps on how many people can be in the same area seems possible. COVID-19 continues to spread despite all efforts, infecting 90% of the world's population. Tragically, many people succumb to the illness, but thankfully most are asymptomatic and mortality rates are much lower than expected. World leaders congratulate themselves for mitigating the impact of the disaster. Then a video emerges on the internet, presumably from China, of a car crash victim crawling from a burning twisted wreck and proceeding to attack a passing pedestrian before disappearing out of sight. The pedestrian is left lying motionless on the footpath. The camera person approaches to reveal a gruesome bloody sight. The video seems to go black, but the distinct sound of vomiting can be heard, followed by sobbing, then sounds of movement. We then see the bloodied body is now upright and walking towards the camera person. More movement is heard as the camera person appears to turn and run. 3 other bloodied bodies can be seen further ahead, one of which appears to be pulling itself onto its knees. The video goes black again. Lots of movement can be heard and what sounds like screaming, then rapid footsteps. The video ends. Probably the mass rioting that will result in thousands of people not being able to pay their bills in 3 to 4 weeks. I don't understand how the government thinks giving someone $1,000 is going to help them. They'll get to either pay bills or eat, not both, and realistically this will just leave a bunch of people not spending the $1,000 and just forego paying their bills. Shit's going to get real bad. Hackers being quarantined so they get bored and try to hack the Pentagon or a missile silo and everyone is off sick so they succeed. Shit would really hit the fan then. Well, I would like to point out that the climate is quickly changing still. The hurricanes, fires, storms, droughts, floods, and tornadoes are just going to get more unpredictable. And we're approaching tornado season. Thank you for watching Reddit Space. Please subscribe if you love these Reddit stories.